Yeah, hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Billy Watson TV. I got a fight there, I just appeared and then Mike's came in. So I'm very delighted today to get a guest I've been actually wanting to go on for a long time, but doesn't give interviews out too often with people who I don't think's got any established backgrounds. So I'm thankfully, I don't know what you've maybe seen a website, and I've been busy interviewing lots of people. Delighted to have you on, Mike. It's Mike Williams from Sage of Quay. So welcome to the show today, Mike. How are you?
Thank you, Billy. Thank you for having me on your show.
Yeah, it's great to have you on. I've been a long time fan. I've been watching your work from way back when and all the different stuff you've done over the years. You know, you've kind of been fighting, I think, on and off with the Beatles stuff because you want to talk about other stuff, but somehow that keeps dragging you back in. And I'm quite thankful it does because I really enjoy that stuff. There's a few other people out there talk about the Beatles, but I think you've kind of, especially when you got into the memoirs of Billy Shears, which is how you kind of discovered it, but you've latched onto that book and really got into that and delved deep into that and provided a lot of value to people, I think, from that book in particular. But let's just go back to yourself and where you grew up and how you kind of got into music, because I knew you were into the guitar and stuff as when you were younger, playing bands and stuff. Would you like to tell us a bit about your background, please?
Yeah, I grew up in New York, Billy, and as a kid, I I started really playing guitar around 14 or 15 years old. Before that, I was kind of my father had an acoustic guitar and I was strumming that, but it got a little more serious when I was 14 or 15. And I was a huge, huge Beatle fan,
So
like
this was
many,
in
many
this,
people.
how old was this, like the late 60s? You were 14, 15.
I would have been, yeah, it would have been 1975 around there.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm 63, so I was born in 1959. I'm not that old.
Ah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, so in the mid 70s, I was uh, playing the guitar and I was teaching myself songs. And the way I did it was I bought myself sheet music, simple sheet music, and I bought Beatle music because I knew how the songs went. So when I practiced, I knew whether I was getting it right or not.
Right, okay.
That's how I did it.
You were hugely into the Beatles back then. They were kind of your main band.
Yeah, the Beatles. I was also heavily into Jimi Hendrix, Led Zeppelin, a lot of the British invasion bands. But probably my three most favorite were the Beatles, Zeppelin, and Jimi Hendrix. But I listened to everything, and so over the years, I just decided that I didn't want to play cover music. I found it boring. I always found myself wanting to write my own music. That was my inclination. So in the late 70s, I had a band and we focused on writing our own music and trying to get that music published, recording contract, and all that stuff, only to find out that the music industry is completely closed. They
Yeah.
don't take unsolicited material. That's how naive we were back then. And so it extended into the 1980s. But at that point, the band had disbanded because everybody had to go get a job to get some money to go pay the bills.
Yeah.
And I was pretty much doing solo stuff. I was working a lot with my brother, who was a drummer and a keyboard player, and he had a home studio when he lived in Maryland in the U.S. And it was a 4-track studio he had, and so I would I would drive up for the weekends, and we would, and this was going into the 1990s as well. In the 1980s, we were still going to into studios, my brother and I, and we had our drummer Max, and but we were also then transitioning to the home studio stuff, and so I would come down during the weekends. I was the main songwriter, and we would put the songs together. Essentially, it was me and my brother, and we put some really good stuff together back then. They were all demos. I was thinking one day that I would put the demos together and release something. Um, and then that went into the 1990s. And then there was a stretch where I was still playing guitar, but I wasn't really doing any recording. And it wasn't until 2011 that I decided that I wanted to put my first album out. And so I had songs that I had written over time, and I had to write some additional songs to fill out the album. And the first album was Leaving Dystopia, and there's 10 songs on it. And that was
Quite a,
released
quite a
in
positive album, that, isn't it? It's like quite a few songs in there are quite
yeah.
hopeful and kind of.
Yeah, I
I
do.
think,
I try to write songs that are upbeat, hopeful. I mean, I will write songs that will call out the craziness in the world.
I
I
like
mean,
the one you done, Breathe, I think.
yeah,
Just
or Breathe, yeah.
that was very good. Just at the start of the kind of lockdown nonsense, you can take the mask off and breathe.
Yes, right. Yep, yep. So Breathe was released in December of 2020, I think it was. And so in between Breathe and Leaving Dystopia, I had my album Hollow Moon.
I mean,
And yeah, and Breathe was one of those songs. It's still doing very well. It gets a lot of play.
yeah,
My publisher is TuneCore, so I can see the statistics when it comes in. And it was interesting because, Breathe was just a song that I had this riff for a long time. Actually, two riffs. They're very similar, but different. And I sat down one day and I just combined them, and the words came very easily because of all the
yeah.
nonsense going on in the world. Right? It's very easy to write about it. And yeah, that was Breathe. And then since then, I've written 7 more songs. So I've got 8 in the bag now, and I'm looking to get 10 songs written and recorded, and then I'll put a third album out. I'm shooting for early 2023 to get that done.
And is Breathe the only one you've released from that?
No, I released all of them. So what I've been doing is, instead of just waiting and holding the songs and then releasing an album, I've been releasing them as singles.
Yeah.
And so what the third album is going to be is a compiling of those singles. That's essentially what it's going to be. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it. It's been fun to really get back into the music and focus on that, because that's positive, it's creative, using your imagination, and you can step away from this big black hole that they're trying to suck us into.
Again, I listened to a few tracks from your first album today. I got that feeling of Leaving Dystopia. It was time for, we have to kind of move towards something good and
Yes.
positive, rather than dwell down and focus on the negative. Yeah, we have to look at it and deal with it and kind of learn to step away from it. And I don't even necessarily fight the system. It's about removing ourselves from it, because all the legal name stuff and everything is tied in there. We have to look towards building something new and better. So that's the kind of ideas that I got listening to that Leaving Dystopia this morning. A few of the tracks was
Yeah,
kind of like that.
when you focus too much and overinvest in their psychological operations, that's where you're sending your thoughts and your consciousness. And they manipulate thought and consciousness in order to manifest their agenda. That's what they do. So it doesn't matter how your thoughts and consciousness, how it gets to focus on their stuff. All they care about is that you're focused on it.
Yeah.
And so we do have to stay on top of things that are going on and to call out the nonsense. But we also have to have balance in our life, which means we have to get back to good stuff. We have to get back to writing music, writing poetry, painting, doing gardening, going outside, being in nature, spending time with your family, spending time with your friends, and doing those types of things. Because what they want to do is to strip all of that away from us and just blot it out and have us just focus on what they're putting out through their media, through their hypnosis box, otherwise known as a television set. So, so I made a concerted effort, Billy, over the last couple of months or so, because some people were asking me, well, you're not doing the interviews like you used to and all that stuff. Well, a lot of it is because I am spending a lot of time on the Beatles conspiracy, which is a gigantic conspiracy. But the other reason is because I need to spend more time doing the things like writing the music. My daughter's having a baby at the end of July, my first grandchild. Right. My wife and I have plans, to be there, with the baby and just to do things in life, because, we're at an age now where you don't want to spend the next 20, 25 years getting pulled into their trash heap. You want to try to enjoy life as much as you can.
Again, yeah, but at the same time, we also realize we have a responsibility for the future, So again, it's that balance, because
yes, it's a balance. Yeah, I've told people I'm not backing out. My head is still going to be in the game, but it's going to be a different approach, because we have to keep ourselves mentally and physically healthy in order to take the battle to them.
Well, I was telling you before the show, I lost my job for COVID, and I've not been able to get another job, and I've been doing all these shows and all these interviews, and underneath it, behind the camera, I'm shitting myself. Like, I've got an underlying tension of finances, because the whole game is about money, isn't it?
Yep.
And even though food grows on trees and there's all these houses built already, and we could totally change the way we organise society to just have the basic needs met, and then that frees us all to be creative and follow our own, desires or whatever, for the good of all. If people get kind of ideas, I want to be this for their ego, but you should say, how can I serve best and do what you're good at to serve others? And if we all had that kind of attitude, we can make this world amazing. But this money factor, your whole life's dictated. Now I'm looking at stuff. I'm going to do a job in an airport, lifting people's baggage or doing this stuff. It's just, I don't want to spend my time doing that.
Right.
I've got better things to do in my time, but they don't seem to want to encourage people to grow and, you've got this talent and this, there you go and do that and be amazing. It's all about dumbing down the school system, conformity, think the same. And yeah, I don't know, there's just a lack of opportunity. I think, again, creative people are getting shut down and the arts are getting closed down. Like, your music to me is good enough, but again, you said the industry was blocked. And I met a guy a couple of days ago who says in the 70s he was getting offered deals, but signed the deal with the devil kind of thing, and they want to own all the music and then do what they want with it. So do you think it's that closed, like Freemasonic kind of closed shop in music, or why did you say it was closed when you were trying to make it in the early days? Did you kind of realize all the doors were not opening for you because you're not in the family kind of thing?
Yeah, it's completely controlled, but I didn't know it at the time.
Yeah.
I bought into, I was a young guy, so we bought in, I say not me, but, myself and the other guys in the band, which included my brother and a couple of other guys, that we were naive and thought that if you had the talent and you had the ability, that the doors would be open. And only to find out that that wasn't the case at all. So if you sent a tape, back in the day, it was on cassette tapes. If you sent that out to the major record labels like Capitol, RCA, and the such, they didn't even open it. They sent it back to you with a stamp on it that said, "We do not accept unsolicited material."
Aye.
So unless you had a manager, an agent that was connected into their system, that was the only way that you were going to even get maybe even 5 minutes with, somebody from those record companies or those publishers. But, I figured it out quickly, and they wanted a formula. That's what they wanted in music. They wanted you to write music that was prevalent on the radio at that moment in time. That's what they wanted because it's all scripted out. And I just said, well, that's not what I'm going to do. I don't want to write music based upon what somebody else wrote. I don't, it's like doing cover music. You want me to sound like Meatloaf? In fact, I had one publisher tell me that. He said, well, if you could write music more in the vein of Meatloaf. And I told the guy, I said, Meatloaf, I said, he's a flash in the pan. And then I was shown the door. That's how naive I was, right? But I was telling the truth because he really was a flash in the pan. So, I just decided, you know what, I can't do this. So I went and I ended up working in the corporate world for over 30 years and doing that, also trying to keep my music going, so I was trying to weave the music in and out of the career, the corporate career.
Is the music still a passion for you? Obviously, you're still doing it. Would you like to spend, full time? Do you still have a kind of a dream to be that rock star in the music? Is that, or is it just something you couldn't let go and you kind of got this creative element? So if you don't do it, you feel it. You kind of, because that's what I've been like with comedy over the years. I'm kind of barred. Again, I was going to ask you about people like maybe Bill Hicks or George Carlin. I think they're controlled, and even the Sex Pistols, they were seemed to be this revolutionary band. But again, they don't get on the Bill Grundy TV show on BBC, and you don't get record contracts with EMI or whatever unless somebody wants you to create the chaos or whatever.
Yeah.
To create that movement. So, I mean, it's like, it seems to be, yeah, you do get to a certain level, and even people like Billy Connolly, who's a big hero in Scotland for the Scottish comedians, or you wouldn't like to think, 'cause he even talks about Freemasons in his act, you wouldn't like to think he's one of them. But when, is there certain people, you've got the talent, you will make it regardless, or do they literally control it all? Do you think there's anyone out there that's genuine?
Yeah, there are people that are in the system that are not in the brotherhood. But let me just, the one question you asked me before is if I if I'm looking for a record contract. No, I'm not. I just do it for the love of music. I like to write music. I like to play. I like to record songs and share my songs, by putting them out. That's
Yeah.
where I'm at. I have no desire to be a quote rock star or be on stage or any of that nonsense. I'm not, you know, 20 years ago, not even 40 years ago, that would have been my mindset. But
Right.
today, no, not at all. Today, my mindset is my family, my friends, and trying to continue to do the work I'm doing to get the word out. Now, there are people in the music and entertainment industry that are not in the club. They're not in secret societies. They're not Freemasons. So, what you have is you have a couple of tiers, and the way it works is there are those that are bloodlined and they are born into the system. And so those people are earmarked very early on to wind up with very prominent roles in the entertainment and music industry. So Billy as an example, Billy Shears, Billy's bloodline, Billy was earmarked and tapped very early on, went through trauma-based mind control programs and all that stuff so that he could be molded and shaped to be who he is today. So when you see these really, really big stars, in all likelihood, they are bloodlined and they were groomed to be where they're at today. Then you have those that are kind of the middle tier, and they are in the brotherhood. They would be Freemasons, and they're brought in and they're given opportunities within the music and entertainment industry that you and I are excluded from. So think of it as like you work for a company like Exxon, as an example, a corporation. So the employees within Exxon are going to be, they're going to have opportunities made available to them that people who do not work for Exxon are never going to see because you're not working for Exxon.
Yeah.
The Masonic structure, the Freemason structure, is exactly like a corporate structure. There's no difference. They operate the exact same way. So strategy comes down from the top, and then within the pyramid of power, within that corporate entity, we'll call it Freemasons Incorporated, they have skills and resources, and they have people that they reach out to tap into in order to get their agenda and their initiatives deployed, to get them executed, to put them into play. So that's kind of the second tier. The third tier would be people like a lot of these pop stars that they are pulled in because they can be used and abused in order to move the agenda forward. So they don't really understand what the big picture is. They are enticed with a carrot that says, hey, you want to be famous, you want to make a lot of money. And what happens is they get pulled in, they give them a taste of success. And of course, they're like, oh, this is great. I'm becoming famous. People know who I am. My song was at the top of the charts. And then what they'll do is they will come back to them. I say I'm talking about the controllers, the handlers will say, well, if you like that bit, there's a lot more if you do X, Y, and Z. So what they try to do is to get them in deeper and deeper and deeper until they get to the point where there's no return. And they think nothing of taking these people and, like I said, using them and then abusing them, just discarding them and not caring. So I've identified at least those three tiers of how it operates within the entertainment and music industry.
Yeah. It just seems very controlled, and don't know. Back in the day, you might have thought it was more organic, but then you learn about Dave McGowan's work with the Laurel Canyon and stuff like that, and it was incredible. Like Joni Mitchell, Neil Young, Stephen Stills. There's just
Frank
all of them.
Zappa.
Yeah, Frank Zappa was actually a bit more honest in a lot of his interviews.
Yeah,
and he kind of let it be known that.
But he was from the Laurel Canyon scene.
Yeah, he had a house there, didn't he? It was quite an interesting house he had there.
I'm sorry?
He had a house in Laurel Canyon, Frank Zappa. It was a very interesting house. Have you ever seen it? No?
No, I hadn't seen it.
Yeah. I think some crazy parties happened there. So, yeah, so you're going along when you're younger, and how did you kind of discover the conspiracy world then? What kind of got you down this path and going into researching and starting your Sage of Quay website? Because that's obviously taken up a large part of your life
Yeah, I don't know. You know, it's really interesting when I try to think back how it all started. I started to wake up around 2006. I was 47 years old, and I had some, you know, life experiences, some events that took place, and I had to take a step back and take stock in my life and say, where am I going? I'm 47 years old. Like, what's the path? What's the plan? You know?
So 9/11 had came and went, and you'd kind of bought into all that then.
Yeah, yep. Originally, when 9/11 happened, I believed it, and then 2009, I had a very powerful spiritual experience, which really turned everything around. It put me on a completely different path. And then in '09, I had that spiritual experience.
That's what you said, yeah.
Yep. And from there, everything changed for me, Billy. So that's when I decided that I was going to do a blog. And at the time, I was listening to David Icke, um, you know, InfoWars, that type of thing there, which is kind of the first step on the ladder, right? Those
Yeah,
types of,
that's exactly what I'd done back in
yeah,
the day.
just about everybody.
Right.
And then what happens eventually is you graduate from that. You move on. Well, I think people who are really awake, I like to consider myself very much awake. We move on from that stuff. Um, and we get into deeper aspects of the conspiracy, deeper aspects of what the reality is really like. So I started the blog going back. I think it was around 2011. It's over a decade.
And on the blog,
And
you could share posts. Is it just a case of sharing, you know,
I just
articles you
share
find
information.
interesting? Yeah.
Yeah, I don't create my own information or my
Yeah.
own blog posts. What I do is every morning I go through my feeds and I decide what would be of interest to my readers. And so I've been doing that for over a decade, which includes my own research, by the way. When I do my own research and my own shows, I'll put it up on the blog. And in 2014, I decided that I was going to do podcasting.
Yeah.
I didn't know, you know, I, I didn't know, you know, where to even start. And there were two people that came on the show that kicked it off for me. One was David Icke. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
Person I know had his email, and I just emailed him, and David got back to me like within a week and said, "Yeah, I'll do it." Now I know some people have questions about David and whether he's controlled opposition and all that stuff, but my point is that he said yes and helped me get started.
Well, to be honest, he actually came on my show as well, and I wasn't going to go live with him. And the last minute, I went live on my page, and I got like 100,000 views in it, and it really
Yeah.
kickstarted my page. So,
Yeah. I mean, we could say what we want about David, or people can say what they want, but the truth of the matter is, a lot of what he's presented over the last 30 years or so is accurate.
you just kind of wonder, you know, sometimes he says things like, you know, well, Orwell and Huxley, they wrote about those things because they were in the club and they knew about it, you know. And now he's saying, oh, look at me, I've revealed the secrets. We're like, well, how did you know about it? You know?
Right. So, and I think one of the biggest mistakes that David made, not to pick on David, it's just we're having a discussion about him, is when he started talking about reptilians. Right.
Well, he's done it in such a way there back in the day where it was very kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? In your face, over the top, kind of shocking on purpose.
Right.
To kind of get that attention, where it could have went about it like he'll talk about it now in a slightly more calmed down way, whereby it'll be like more like it's kind of possession and people are seeing it
archons and
you know, maybe getting an impression and not like all of a sudden the Queen then like, I'm a reptile, you know.
Right. But
I don't know if that happens, you know. Maybe I don't kind exactly the whole shape shifting. I've never seen it. Some people have said they've seen some kind of shape shifting, but again, it's more in the kind of skin going to the scale of the eyes.
Yeah.
As opposed to transforming into a reptilian and doing what they're doing.
Right. So if we put it into the category that there is some evil force out there, some parasitical force, then he was right. Okay, then he was right. It's just the way he put it together, because once he did that, then it was a field day for those in mainstream media.
Up in that, well, he was already. I mean, he got on the Wogan show. Now, Wogan's a trained Jesuit, you know, and so he got on there and to be mental. It was like to create this character almost. You know, it's like set up to, here's the madman. So now if you believe in conspiracy theories, you're crazy like David Icke.
Right.
So that was already kind of in place. And then they went full balls to the wall with the reptilian, which just kind of cemented that. So even now, like 30 years later, I'm having an argument, or my stepdad will say to me, oh, I can't believe a word you say. You think the Queen's a reptile. You told me the Queen was a reptile like 25 years ago, you know? I was like, well, I was reading that, and you can't even begin to explain it, you know? Well, again, the demonic force of it, there is maybe truth behind it, but it's just a non-starter. So you're just losing a lot of people with that.
Yeah.
So it become, I think Alex Jones described it at the time as like putting a turd in a fruit bowl or whatever, you know?
Punch bowl, yeah.
Punch bowl, yeah. But again, who knows if they're both kind of just playing the game, because they seem to be quite friendly now. But it's again, the information's there. David Icke says, take the information and do what you want with it. It's up to you then to verify that information and to go down the different rabbit holes. And you say, oh, look under here. Because I always wonder why I didn't talk about the legal name so much. And it's quite funny, when I was interviewing him, I said, you know, why didn't you talk about the legal name back in 2012? It's because he started to talk about it now. He says, oh, yeah, I didn't think people were ready for it back then. But then after the interview, I was like, hold on, they were ready for shape-shifting reptilians.
Yeah, I think sometimes, you know, in all fairness, you do have to pick and choose when you're going to come out with information. You know, it's a decision that you make. And there are people, Billy, that they say that I'm controlled opposition.
Yeah, I've been called Satanist and stuff like that because I done that in a picture for a laugh with Madonna.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, I've been accused of being a Freemason. I work for Billy, Tom Harriet, who is the author of the book, The Memoirs of Billy Shears. He and I work together. We're in cahoots. None of that stuff is true, you know? So what I try to do is, like you mentioned, when I get information from David or information from InfoWars, I'm just picking on them as an example. I'll listen and I will take what resonates, and what doesn't, I will just leave it on the table. That's what we have to do, because nobody is 100% correct.
Yeah.
In fact, I tell people there is no truth community. It's a community of perspectives. People bring their belief systems, they bring it to the table, they present, and then they call it truth. Well, the truth is, the switch is either on or off. It's either true or it's not, true or false. But people want to look at truth as some kind of dimmer switch. And they'll say, well, it's my truth. Well, it's not a truth. That's a perspective that you have. And that's what we really have. We have different perspectives out there. And then it's up to us individually to figure out, you know, what resonates and what doesn't. That's what I do.
Yep. So you got into the Billy Shears book, and that's what kind of got you into the Paul is dead thing. So let's talk about that a wee while, because you have spent such a long time in the Beatles thing. Going down that rabbit hole, you've done such great work in it. You mentioned Thomas, was it Harriet?
Tom Harriet.
Yeah. So you're in communication with him, and it almost seems like, do you believe that Billy is behind that book? Obviously.
Yeah,
and
Billy is behind that book. Yeah.
Yeah, and he's, so basically, essentially, you're, you know, directly almost, because they'll put in the book, you'll do some research on it, and you'll make some stuff, and then all of a sudden the next book, it's like they're taking your work and kind of confirming it. It's like you're almost somehow in a position where you're at the forefront of this revelation. And obviously, do you think there will be a full revelation after he dies, and that will come out, or will just be kind of kept this underground, kind of for those in the know? Because that's what it's for. He is telling people, you know, for us in the know, he's revealing it. Like somebody the other day there, Paul McCartney was at Glastonbury. Paul McCartney, Billy. So I put on my Facebook, you did Ken Paul McCartney, isn't he really Paul McCartney? And then I got 75 likes and stuff, and a lot of people agreeing with me. So there's a lot of people who know it, but there's a few other people came on with, what you're talking about. Oh, I remember that story, you know. But it is quite common knowledge, is what I'm saying, for a lot of people these days, you know. So
it's picked up steam. It's definitely, it has gotten legs, and it's picking up more and more momentum. And a lot of people are starting to question Billy now. And I don't think it bothers him at all, to be honest with you.
No.
It doesn't. I mean, he
knows the secret will never get out in the mainstream news. You know,
no, it's never going to get to the point where there's a complete disclosure. At one point, I thought that after he died, that they would disclose that he had replaced him. But after the last edition of memoirs, where they talk about the game plan as far as the one world order, the religion, and how the Beatles are a big part of that whole cult to move to that new age religion. Um, I think that if it
Yeah.
does get disclosed, Billy, 100%, it's going to be a long, long time after you and I are gone. I just don't think they're going to do it. And by the way, even if Billy stood up tomorrow and had a major news conference and said, "Hey, by the way, I'm not Paul McCartney, I'm Billy Shears," people wouldn't believe him. They would say, "Ah, oh, what a joker! He's such a card." And that's that's how deeply rooted the indoctrination is, the conditioning. The Beatles, and I was in the cult, by the way, because I was a huge Beatle fan. It's a cult. It's an absolute cult. It's no different than if you stood up in a Christian church and you raised your hand and you asked the pastor, "Did Jesus really exist?" Right? They would
Yeah.
take you outside and stone you. So you have the same reaction. You have this very, very uh, uh, over the top reaction by so many people when you question the Beatles. Even when you show them proof and evidence of the fact, as an example, that he was swapped out and replaced, biological Paul was swapped out and replaced with Billy. They don't want to hear it. They don't want to see it.
I mean,
No,
there's undeniable evidence again, if you just the ear position in the nose and all this stuff.
yeah,
There was not a couple of guys back in the day. They went out to prove that he was the same guy, and then actually decided that actually he wasn't the same guy.
yeah. The Italian team,
Yeah,
a man and a lady, did the forensics back. I think they were going to release a report back in 2009. And yes, they were going to prove that no, it is the same guy. And once they started doing the forensic work, they were like, "Uh-oh, it's not the same guy." And that got squashed, by the way. Right?
yeah,
That did not get the legs that they
it should have
expected
got.
it to get. It just got squashed. In fact, I think around the time that they were going to come out with that, that's when Billy started doing some appearances on the Letterman show, and he was talking about the Very Good Double, which is him, and he was mocking it and making fun of it, doing his masterful speaking bit. So
It's unbelievable how they do that, isn't it? You just wonder if it's rehearsed or he just sees a wee opportunity here and there where he I can say this, and he's like, there's me, and then there's the other guy, the famous him, and I'm
right.
not him, and all this stuff, and just the way he'll talk about that, and yeah, again,
He's
for those that
always telling
yeah, it's
people.
unbelievable.
It is unbelievable, and it goes over so many people's heads, and that's why I did the whole masterfully speaking bit, and I tried to explain how it works, and you have to listen very closely because once you understand it, then it's very easy to hear it.
Oh yeah, totally.
It's
You can see
very
when he
easy
gets
to
into it.
recognize it. Yeah.
Yeah, and that what was the guy, that fat guy, James Corbin or something like that, who
Yeah.
he's bosom buddies with him, and it's just like a wee in joke they've got going, isn't it? I mean, the Paul McCartney thing, there must be an open secret in the music industry,
Oh yeah.
and they're all call him Billy and stuff like that. It's just, and I was going to say though, back in the day, what's your view on the fact that did they take the original Paul McCartney out? Did they do this Faustian deal kind of thing? Signed the deal, him and John Lennon especially, with the Freemasons. Then you kind of knew he was going to get taken out and died, and it get a bit closer, and all of a sudden he's getting taken out. Do you think it was the car accident on the way home from the record studio where they had an argument, and he died and got decapitated and got reported, and it was just an accident? And then it says all Beatles, because you talked about the religion there. Obviously, I don't think this, but we can't announce this to the world because we'll have to get a replacement in to keep the story going, or there'll be too many suicides. That was almost one excuse for it.
Right. Right. They said that people would just become very upset, and
If they tell Paul McCartney lost his head, so we need to get his replacement in. But again, do you think that Billy was the son of Alistair Crowley and all, like, since birth? Because he even worked with the Beatles and stuff and helped, I think, write their music before he joined.
I believe he did. Yeah, I believe that Billy was in the picture way before late 1966 when he was chosen to be the primary replacement.
Yeah,
To
this is
replace
something I was going to ask
biological
about,
Paul.
because was I not planned to be the primary replacement before, because because you're saying they were going to have various people play him, and then they decided just to stick with Billy.
Right.
Well, then why did that discussion happen if he was already in place to be Paul for a long time? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. So it was planned from the very beginning. This is the thing that people don't understand. So there was a Faustian bargain, and it took place in October of 1963. It took place after Please Please Me went to the top of the charts in the UK. Remember, I was
Like
talking.
what you were saying at the start, yeah, they give you a wee
Right,
bit of
just
space.
kind of grease the skids and get them acclimated to success. Hey, do you
But,
want some
but
more?
what about Brian Epstein and stuff before that, taking them to Hamburg and stuff? So was he not controlling them and stuff?
Yeah. Brian Epstein. Before him, it was Alan Williams. Alan Williams was really their first handler, and before him, it was Pete Best and his mother Mona. So Mona had the Casbah Club, and Pete was actually scheduling and setting up the shows where they were going to play.
Right.
And then Pete was out of the picture. Then Alan Williams took them to Hamburg, and then once Alan did his bit, getting them into Hamburg, I think it was August of 1960. Um, then it was Brian Epstein that took over the band. Um, so yeah, then obviously what happened after that was the whole Cinderella story. That's what I call it.
So you think they were kind of modelled up to that point before that, but then they've got the deal with Please Please Me, and then they've done the Faustian deal at that point, and then it's went mega.
I think that they were handled from the very beginning. I'm almost positive they were handled from the very beginning, Billy. So it goes back to a thought that I have that they were, in all likelihood, in some form of mind control programs as kids.
Yeah.
And they were being groomed and handled. And of course, a lot of people don't want to hear this, but this happens all the time, especially in the music and entertainment industry.
They both
And so they
lost
were
their
brought
mothers
along.
as well. John and Paul had lost their mothers again, maybe
Yes.
an accident, but it seemed like that was part of trauma as well,
And we don't really know anything about their parents. So when you go back and you try to do research on John's biological parents or Paul's biological parents, you cannot find really much information on them. Why is that? How is it that we don't have a plethora of information on the parents of two of the most famous musicians in the world? How can that possibly be? So, that raised a red flag. So I believe that they were on the radar for a long time. The way the deep state works, the way Tavistock works, is they have a pool of resources. So it's not just the Beatles that they had their hooks into and that they were handling and grooming. There were other bands as well. So if you go back to the old, days in Hamburg and back in England at the time, there are many of these acts where one way or another they wound up as major acts. Denny Lane, Bev Bevan, who were in the Diplomats with Billy. Bev Bevan went on to drum with ELO. Denny Lane, we know Denny Lane with the Moody Blues, and then with Wings.
I'm just going just briefly there. Just Denny Lane, he posted something recently. Hold on.
Oh, Denny did?
He posted this with "Happy Birthday, Paul." Can you read that?
Yeah, let me see.
And then basically just said something here about we see the world as doing fine without the need of disguise. Just another wee clue.
Okay.
About the warning. Anyway, just thought I'd show you that.
Yeah. Well, Denny has been connected into the scene for a very long time, and Denny Lane and Billy go back a long ways.
Yeah.
So, but
it was that good interview when he got drunk, wasn't it? He kind of admitted it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. During that interview, unfortunately, the guy that did that interview had himself too many drinks under his belt, and so it's too bad, because I thought to myself, too bad I wasn't there asking the questions.
Right. Okay.
If you're going to have Denny Lane on and you're going to interview him, you have to try to keep yourself sober, I think, right? But even though Denny still masterfully spoke, and he let the cat out of the bag. I know a guy that's a friend of mine who used to do some work at the concert venues, and Denny was coming into play, and his name was Walt. And so after the show, Denny was packing up his guitar, and so Walt said to him, "Hey, Denny, talk to us about Billy Shears." And he says, "Who?" He says, "Oh, come on, Danny, you know who we're talking about. You know, Billy Shears." He goes, "Oh, you mean Billy McCartney,
Aye.
right?"
I'm not saying
So,
Paul McCartney.
yeah, so Denny on occasion has let the cat out of the bag, but you have to have the awareness to know what it is that he's telling you. He's not going to tell you, "Oh, yeah, Paul was replaced and it's Billy now." But
Yeah.
it's at least two times now. One time with a guy that I know, and I actually did an interview with Walt going back a couple of years ago where he spoke about the entire interaction. So yeah, so the Beatles had that Faustian bargain, and which means that all of this stuff was planned, Billy.
So they're basically just ordinary musicians have done this deal, and they must know that session musicians obviously, you know, they're doing all the backing track and making it as good, and they're just playing the role. So every time you see these Beatles, they're basically just carted around everywhere for 2 or 3
They're
years.
performers.
Yeah, they're given interviews, and you know, meanwhile in the background, all the music's getting written and stuff, and they turn
Exactly.
up and do the vocals, and they're not these
Exactly.
hardcore creative geniuses. Was
No.
it you? Was it you that done the Hey Bulldog
Yeah.
audio? Aye, that was quite obvious as
Quite
well.
telling, right?
The studio version's unbelievably amazing. You
Right.
know, obviously shit hot people playing, and then you hear them battering
The
it out.
demo was amateur hour.
Yeah,
And then you hear what happened, folks, for those of you who don't know. I had a clip of John Lennon playing Hey Bulldog on the piano, and the piano playing was horrific. It really was. It was very, very amateurish. And then we get to Hey Bulldog, the recording on the album, and then the piano playing is pristine. It's obviously a professional studio player playing the keyboards on Hey Bulldog. So how did Lennon go from doing that demo to playing the piano like that on the recorded track? And the problem is that if you look at the credits, it'll say piano John Lennon, right?
aye,
So,
yeah, that's the
so
problem
right,
there.
so that's what happens. So the official story, what happens is it balls itself up. So when you start digging in and you start peeling back the onion and looking at what really went on, it's many times it's not hard to dissect and to take apart the official story. But the Beatles, going back to your point, Billy, they were performers. That's what they were. They were not great musicians. They were
Yeah.
not, right? When they first
Well,
got
they
to
openly admit
Hamburg,
that they
they
can't write their own music and stuff like that. I mean, not that it's necessary, but they openly say, you know, we're not very good musicians. Quite often they'll say that.
many times they said that. In fact, I have a clip in my big presentation, Did the Beatles Write All Their Own Music, where John Lennon says he was embarrassed by his guitar playing.
Aye.
And I have another clip where George Harrison said he never practiced, ever. He and Ringo never practiced.
Because they
So
didn't
if you
need to.
never,
They probably just thought, just turn up and do what you need to do, you know.
yeah,
So they had the dreams probably of being this rock star. Then they've kind of realised actually we're just getting used here.
right.
So then they probably started not liking themselves, and because they realised that, and then so they were doing that, and you did a great presentation with what was it, Rubber Soul and
Yeah,
Revolver, obviously being written, especially Rubber Soul, I think it was in that short space of time,
Rubber Soul, yeah.
and then Billy comes into the picture. It seems to be like there was a whole period there where the songs were getting written by session musicians, and then Billy's come in, and I think he's had a great influence, obviously, in Sergeant Pepper.
Yes.
What I'm saying is, like, at which point did the Beatles actually start contributing? Did they want to contribute, you know, like to get involved in it more?
Okay,
Because
so
obviously it must have been realised everyone else is doing it. Like, what about me? I was supposed to be doing this, you know?
yeah, so I'll summarize. So between 1962 and 1966, the Beatles wrote very little to anything, and they were not playing on the recorded tracks. Um, George Martin hired studio musicians like Vic Flick, Bernard Purdy,
Yeah,
and others,
the
Big
drummer.
Jim Sullivan, to come in and play on the recordings. In fact, Bernard Purdy said that he drummed on 21 early Beatles songs. And in a recent clip that I put up, a recent video, I should say, of Bernard that goes back to the early 2000s, he said that Ringo played on nothing
Aye.
in the early period between 62 and 66. So think of it in terms, folks, it's the same thing that the Monkees did. The Beatles came in and sang the vocals. And while the Beatles were out performing and all that was the Beatles' job. The Beatles' job was to be the veneer. It was to be the performers, to have the front end of the Cinderella story. That's really what it was all about. So while they were doing all of that and doing 16 cities in 16 days, a lot of their tours were like that. George Martin was back in the studio with professional songwriters and studio musicians laying down the tracks. And then he brought the Beatles in. The tracks were all done. He overlaid the vocals and the harmonies. Then he mixed the vocals and the harmonies with the existing instrumental tracks, and that's how the albums got released. Now, there was also a post on a Paul Is Dead Facebook page that a friend of mine alerted me to, and this person wrote a great post where he had gone to a Donovan concert, and he had a VIP pass. You know, you can go back as a meet and greet with Donovan, and he asked Donovan about how the Beatles were able to write so many great songs in such a short period of time. And Donovan responded that there was a genius songwriter that was involved. And while the boys were, quote, gallivanting around, this is a quote that came from this post. This guy was relaying his conversation, the conversation he had with Donovan. While they were gallivanting around, all of this work, the creation of the music, the recording of the music was getting done. Then, we get to Sgt. Pepper. Sgt. Pepper is essentially, it's the Billy and George Martin show. It's Billy's baby. It's all him. There was an interview that Billy did going back, probably back in the 1980s, where he stated that George Harrison wasn't even there for the Sgt. Pepper sessions.
Right.
He wasn't there. He was absent. He did not go to the sessions.
A lot of times when I think they did do stuff on, he would go and overdub it and remove the parts the next night. So Billy was 100%. Round about that time, obviously Sgt. Pepper was a big explosion for the psychedelic scene, which was obviously created by the CIA,
Kicked off the Summer of Love.
Yeah. So that obviously I think had a hugely detrimental effect on people's consciousness. And although it was deemed a world awakening and hippie, actually it put a lot of people off against people talking about anti-war and stuff like that because they're all the dirty hippies, and it's fucked up a lot of people, I think, creating this whole hippie myth. What was the point I was going to say? Yeah, so do you think Billy was brought in specifically to kind of change the Beatles from what they were to this psychedelic? Because he had that interview where, you've asked me a question and now I've admitted taking LSD. That was done intentionally to get it out into the wider world.
Yes.
And the Sgt. Pepper album again was done. Was that his kind of, go and do this, mate? We want you to bring this psychedelic album. Was that the point of getting Billy in there? Maybe the original Paul maybe wouldn't want to do that kind of thing. I think there's an element of that.
No, I don't buy the thing about, a lot of people will say that the original biological Paul McCartney, he wasn't buying into the program, into the agenda, and so they offed him, he stepped out, and all that stuff. No, I go back to what I was saying before. Biological Paul McCartney and John Lennon for sure were in mind control programs. How do I know this? Because we have pictures of them with birdcage symbolism on their head. Right, the birdcage symbolism is Illuminati symbolism for mind control and MK Ultra slaves.
So this is why even now we can kind of feel sorry for Billy, because although he is a cunt and waving the Ukrainian flag at Glastonbury, he is practically still mind controlled.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. So Billy, now you asked me before whether he was Crowley's, if Crowley is his father. It's possible. It's very possible. We haven't come down with anything definitive, but it certainly leans toward that. And it appears that what probably happened was Crowley had sex magic. And Billy was probably the result of sex magic. And children who are conceived from sex magic rituals are considered special. And so they are identified at birth to be groomed and handled to have very influential positions in the world. Some, it could be politicians, it could be the music industry, the entertainment industry, but they will be very influential and very powerful. So it's possible that it could have happened that way with Billy. And yes, and Billy was in a mind control program. He admits this in the memoirs of Billy Shears. It's trauma-based mind control. And yeah, and we can see today that he's pushing the controller's agenda. I mean, he's not anti-establishment, which is kind of interesting because the Beatles were depicted as anti-establishment.
Yeah.
Right. Fast forward now 50 years,
Same with Mick Jagger
and
and Stones as well.
he is the establishment.
Aye. Well, Mick Jagger done that song with David Grohl that had a couple of digs.
David Grohl.
I fucking hate him. Remember he fell off the stage and broke his leg, and then Billy came to the rescue and that. Do you think that was staged almost, or
Yeah,
they became bosom
and
buddies?
two dead bodies, right, in bands that he's been in. So somebody asked me, "What did you think about that, Mike?" I said, "I think I would not want to be in a band with David Grohl."
That was so creepy. That was so creepy as well. That video they made.
Yeah.
The Foo Fighters, was it in hell or something like that? And the guy drummer died in it, Hawkins.
Yes. Yep.
That was creepy as fuck. And then
It was very creepy.
You
Yeah,
should be
it
saying
was-
to yourself, hold on a minute, somebody should be asking them questions. Because, I don't know. Again,
Yeah.
it's just they're mocking us as well, a lot of it, It's constant fucking with us. But anyway, let's stay on topic with this. I can go everywhere, but...
Oh, you're doing great.
It's a hard thing, though, because this topic in particular, somebody said in my post the other day, why is it important to know if he's been replaced or not? They're all actors. Well, the thing about the Beatles, this one, it just lead into everything. You can go down so many rabbit holes with this, even the numerology aspect of it, like
Right.
the dates, everything they're released and stuff like that. I mean, what's
People
your
who say that, Billy, people who say that are not awake. Okay. They might think they're awake. They're not
Yeah.
awake. They don't understand the implications. First of all, it's a massive deception that's been going on for 60 years. So if you just chalk it up and say, oh, what's the big deal? They lie about everything. Well, that's why I've taken the time to help people understand that the Beatles, as a massive psychological operation to social engineer the world,
Yeah.
not just one country, the world, and what it's leading to. And it's leading to Crowley's Eon of Horus, which some people will refer to as the Age of Aquarius or the New Age. And let me tell you, folks, what that's all about. It's about a new world order, a one world order with a one world religion with a whole lot less people. And in order to get where they are today, there were many, many tools, the Beatles being one of those tools in their toolbox. And I always tell my listeners that the music and entertainment industry is a gigantic tool in their toolbox. But without that conditioning, we would not be where we are today. We are where we are at in the world today, facing the problems that we're facing as a direct result of psychological operations like the Beatles. And even as I'm saying this, it's going to go over so many people's heads, and they're just going to roll their eyes and say, that's ridiculous. The Beatles music was great. It was this, it was that. Hey, it was a lot of great music, but it had an agenda behind it. That's what people have to understand. So I get that all the time, and I just, you know what? I don't waste any time on it, Billy. If you can't figure it out at this point, I have done so much work to explain it. And if you still can't comprehend it, then I just need to bypass you and move on.
Yeah, I mean, you have done amazing work. Just the John Lennon one was about, I've seen a legend from Jesus to Paul,
Yeah.
And it's just this Paulism, and it is this kind of new age. It's almost woke, do you think? The hippie thing mean peace, love, tolerate everybody. Now you can be whatever you want and have a pronoun what you want and all this nonsense. It's went completely insane. The left, so-called left and right, is two wings of the same bird, but the left is more fascist than the right these days, being so woke. You can't say anything to anybody, and it's just sickening. It's like everyone's totally invented in this world, and if you've got a logical, sane brain in your head, it's hard to fucking get through your day.
Well, think in terms of Lennon's song, Imagine. Imagine no possessions.
Yeah.
What do we have the World Economic Forum saying today?
Yeah.
You'll own nothing and be happy.
Yeah.
And I did a video going back explaining how Imagine was predictive programming. It was table setting. It was conditioning for the New World Order. In fact, according to memoirs, John Lennon didn't even write Imagine.
Yeah.
The footnote in the book says it was generously credited to him. John didn't write Imagine. Imagine is the anthem of the one world order.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, there's a video on John Lennon, I think it's called Imagine, the movie done, and you see him in his mansion and he's playing a bit of Imagine to somebody. You know, and the guy says, "Oh, I like that one." I think it was another musician, might have been, oh, I forget his name. But anyway, the point is they make it look as though he's sitting there creating it, you know?
Yeah.
They give these clips to make it like seem natural. Oh, that's John Lennon, he just wrote that there in the white piano, whatever, you know? But again, it's all staged. It's in the simplicity of that song. Again, it's probably genius, the simplicity of it and how it can get into people's heads, you know?
Yeah.
And again, the repetition of things as well. Like your songs, like that Breathe, if that was played everywhere, it'd be in everybody's head, you know? So they make shite songs get popular just by repetition on the radio. That's what does my head. And I used to work in this food factory and shite radio on all day, every day, with the same crappy songs. And then people, oh, I like this one. It's like, oh, it's fucking shit. It's only because you've heard it so much, you know? But that's...
Well, they own it. They own the airwaves. They own the distribution channels. They own all of that stuff.
Yeah.
So each genre of music, Billy, was developed by the deep state, by the Committee of 300, you know, using Tavistock and the social engineers, the social scientists out of Tavistock to move the population in a certain direction. So, you know, the whole British invasion, you had heavy metal, you have punk, techno, all of these genres of music. When you think about it, they were all put in place, and they were done in order to shape and condition society. So this is what they do. They just screw with people's minds.
Yeah, literally.
And right, and steering them and moving them in a particular direction. And you know, they have many, like I said, tools available to them. It's not just the music and entertainment industry. It's a multifaceted, it's full spectrum domination. That's what they're looking for. And some people would argue that they pretty much have it.
Yeah. It's coming towards the end of the hour that I usually do. There's so much more stuff I could talk to you about. I just wanted to ask you, where do you think it's going? And do you think there's any hope for us to turn this around? Because as you've said, they've probably done it. And it's, you know, the game's fucking wrapped up. And again, I was going to maybe talk to you, there's not enough time, but the Tartarian thing, and was our population created and now there's too many of us that have served their purpose almost and created their machines and done what they needed to do. So now it's time to wipe off some of us. If I'm not saying there's any good behind it, but do you think there might have some positive intentions whereby they're saying, oh no, there is too many people, we need to control it for the sake of the planet? Do you think that could be a possibility at all? Like they are genuinely trying to manage the planet in a good way, or that's got fuck all to do with them, we need to take responsibility back? Because I actually doubt we're capable of actually looking after ourselves, you know?
Yeah. No, I don't think that they have any good intentions, because you know the premise that there's too many people, so they're trying to manage it down so that it's more manageable. There'll be a utopia, everything will be okay. There'll be no more war and all that stuff. Well, my response back to that is, who created the situation where it led to, quote, too many people? Who dumbed down the schools? They did. They did. So they're not off the hook. And but now to answer your question, whether I think that it's over, I don't think it's over. I honestly believe that people like yourself, me, and many others jammed them up. I think they wanted that whole thing over within a year so that they can move on. And what they're shooting for, folks, is 2030. That's their milestone right now, because it's Agenda 21. So Agenda 21 means it's an agenda for the 21st century, and 2030, it's a point in time. It's a checkpoint to see how they're progressing. We just have to keep going. We really do. I don't know what it's going to be at the end of the day. I don't have a crystal ball, but all I know is what we have to do is we have to continue to fight, because where they're going is not a good thing.
They still don't admit to themselves they've been had at this stage of the game, you know? It's just like, come on. They're still, like, I mean, you go into, I sometimes pop into a group and drop a truth bomb and then get fucking told to fuck off pretty quickly. But it's just like a cult, just to keep the truth out, you know? It's just like we're happy in our ignorance and don't let any of, you know, any knowledge that contradicts that or might fucking break us out of our perceived brainwashing. That's not good, you know? We like it down here. So that's I find frustrating, dealing with the general public, that's almost like an enemy. They're working for the Satan at that point in the game because their minds are owned by that. So it makes it harder for people like us just to. I know when we find each other, it's good to talk. Basically, when you find somebody have a like mind, I always like, even though we both know the story, it's just good to connect with somebody. Like, thank fuck we're not alone. So that's kind of why I've done my shows as well, just to provide people a little bit of a place where they can gather and say, "Oh, thank fuck we're not completely insane. Everyone else is."
Right.
And
that's the thing.
The crazy ones.
We're a small percentage of the population, but we are very resourceful. And they've tried to shut us down every which way.
I've just had 10,000 videos taken off of Vimeo. I've had my whole website deballed. I mean, and no argument, no debate, no fucking science, no nothing. And I tried to tell them, where's your evidence, and just like, fuck you, boof, you're gone. That's 15 years worth of work in a fucking heartbeat. It's shocking.
It is shocking. A good friend of mine, Jack Hart, who does a lot of deep research, especially with regard to the esoteric, same thing happened to him on Patreon. Yeah, he just woke up one morning, it was gone.
Aye.
And then when he tried to contact Patreon and ask him, like, why is my stuff gone? Yeah. No response. Aye. They just eliminated him.
Patreon started off natural, and I think they get taken over, the same as YouTube get taken over. The big boys move in, take over, and then fucking that's it.
Yeah, well, any platform that's going to get legs, they're going to try to commandeer it.
Yeah, Instagram.
So platforms like, I think platforms that are definitely on their radar, obviously, would be BitChute, Odyssey, platforms like that, which is still allowing a lot of uncensored content. Some people will say, well, BitChute is censoring a little bit here and there, but
I think it is.
Odyssey,
the guy behind Odyssey, he kind of slags off the other ones and saying we're the only true one. But anyway.
Yeah. I'm on Odyssey, BitChute, Brighteon, Rumble.
I'm going to have to, for my website, I'm going to have to upload them all to my own server somewhere because you can't take that risk. As soon as you start using other people's stuff, they can do it. In fact, they could shut the internet down, which would be quite interested if they'd done that.
Yes. Yep. That's right. They could do that tomorrow. And so that's why we have to be resourceful, and we have to continue to do whatever we can to work around their censorship and their shenanigans. I've had to do it.
Yeah.
I almost lost my YouTube channel going back about 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah. You post most of your controversial stuff on BitChute now, and just a few.
Yeah, I just put trailers up on YouTube. And then
that's pretty desperate, isn't it? We're living in a censorship world. This is, everyone says, oh, what is this, Nazi Germany? Well, here we're getting censored and people just don't care, just carry on with it. This should have just like, whoa, what are you doing? Facebook fact checkers, fuck off. It's supposed to be a free world. Information, people are scared of information. We don't need somebody to protect us from anything. We can deal with it in our own way, People want to be protected. Don't show me that. Don't read it. Don't look at it. People are all adults, It's this way of the nanny state telling us what we can and can't look at and stuff. But at the same time, they're giving sex education and telling children how to masturbate at 4 years old and other.
And they're teaching them LGBTQ stuff at, in kindergarten. Now, when they say, they're protecting people, they're not protecting people. They're protecting themselves.
Yeah, exactly.
They're protecting themselves. That's what they do. And they always turn it around like, oh, we care about you.
So much.
They don't give two shits about us. And everybody needs to start understanding that for people who don't understand.
It's so sickening when these politicians get up there and, Nicola Sturgeon or Boris and just like, just vomit-inducing.
They're morons, Billy. I mean, and if people can't see that they're puppets, in the United States, the leader of the free world is Joe Biden.
It's incredible, isn't it?
He's an 80-year-old guy that craps his pants and he has dementia. And people believe that he is running the country. And in fact, a lot of people in the truth community, I get very annoyed with them because they say, Biden did this. Biden said that. I'm like, excuse me.
Yeah.
Biden didn't do anything. There's a machine behind him.
Yeah.
He's a veneer. So stop being lazy and start looking behind the curtain, because there are people who are calling the shots and it's not him.
A good book you recommend, and it's also available on YouTube and audio, is The Committee of 300. That's a good place to start for really getting down in the deep state.
Dr. John Coleman's book.
Yeah.
Fabulous book.
Yeah.
It was written back in 1985. And if you read that book, his research had culminated to about, I think, 20 years by the time he wrote that book. So he started his research in the 60s. And if you read that book and then just log in your head that was 1985,
Aye.
and you could see what they were doing and where they were at with their agenda, and then you think to yourself, holy smokes, it's 40 years later.
Aye.
Where are they now? But the book is very good because it does expose the internal mechanisms of the deep state, which is the Committee of 300 and everything that flows in underneath it, like Tavistock, the Club of Rome, Bilderberg, the Council on Foreign Relations, the Trilateral Commission, all that stuff, Zionism.
Yep, I mentioned to folks it's on the audiobook and YouTube because, again, people can be lazy to read, but there's no excuse. They can listen to it there.
Yeah.
Would you like to tell people where they can find your stuff and maybe buy your albums and stuff like that?
The best place to go is my hub website. It's Sage of Quay, SAGEOFQUAY, sageofquay.com. All of my links are there, Billy. So if you just go there, it's one-stop shop. You can get to my music. You can get to my blog, my YouTube channels, my Rumble channel, and all that.
That's great. Well, I think we've done a little bit more than an hour, but I've could go on for hours and hours and hours. You've got a lot to talk about. You've done a lot of great work, Mike. We really appreciate that. And I always look forward to your Beatles one, so I'm quite glad you're persistent with it. And well done, because I'm sure it takes a lot out of you going way down to that rabbit hole as well. And those books as well, the Billy Steers ones, kind of gets inside your head, I think.
Yeah.
So,
it's exhausting, that's for sure. I won't deny that.
Yeah.
But it was great, Billy. Thank you so much. It was just a wonderful conversation. It was good to, it was very open and freewheeling.
That's cool. If you're hanging around, I'll just say goodbye to you after the show. But for everyone else, thanks very much for watching. I really appreciate that. sageofquay.com for Mike stuff. And I'm on billywatson.tv as I repopulate my site slowly but surely. Thanks for watching. Cheers and out. Bye-bye.